We're still using it. But we saw that that chemical treatments were only a short-term solution. They were only meant to be a short-term solution, but apparently they developed into longer-term solutions. And so we got into survival testing, and we tested bees from Uruguay with Germany and Poland, and then Tunisian bees in mixed groups, and then we engaged in the international survival test in Croatia. And because it was legal for us to import USDA Russian Pomorski queens into France, it was also legal for us to transship them on to Germany for further testing, because the Germans could not do that directly, but because of the Schengen Agreement, we could do it, so we did. One of the things that marked me a lot on this, on the intermissed test, was that during the survival testing, you don't have many colony losses at the beginning, but then afterwards you can, depending upon the line, you can have a lot of losses. And the intermissed group held up quite well, but for me what was interesting was that also in the carnelian group there were colonies that were very good mite survivors, indicating that potentially we could select for mite resistance in these colonies. And to give you an idea here, this is the first year of the intermissed test. Here, the colonies, there's no real difference. Actually, there's significantly more Varroa mites here than there. But then at the end of the season in 1994, with a very high buildup of the mite population, going up to 94 mites per 100 bees. Now that's a good infestation. And, but if you look here, in the same bee yard, we had colonies in carnelians that had very low mite infestations. So they're being exposed to all these mites also. Into the intermissed group, they had very low infestations, and today I would call these colonies that are down in this range here Varroa black holes, just like I call that a Varroa black hole also. In 1998 in Bremen, we coined the term bond test, that is live or let die. And at that time we predicted that in the future we would have genetic screwdrivers where we could have our selected behaviors, and we could screw those out from one bee and put it into another. Now in 1998, that was you call wishful thinking, or some people might have another name for it, but today this is possible. We do have the genetic tools to do this type of work. And also in addition, we're starting to find some genetic screws that you can play around with. And you'll see in the future there's going to be a lot of more genetic possibilities available, just a matter of they're being discovered. Now during this time, to keep out of trouble during the winter, I went down to South America and we did a little bit of queen rearing down there. These are double nukes, these are for storage. And when I came down to Chile, we had a real problem with European fall group. And so we started to select for hygienic behavior, and in 2 years' time, these problems were eliminated. And what you do on this hygienic test is the same as whether you do it for hygienic behavior or Varroa resistance. First, you have to see what is the frequency of the character that you're looking for in your population. Here, for instance, so we tested actually over 500 colonies, but you always have a few queenless colonies, and so you can't test those. We went through and we took the best group from here and then retested them again later on, and then from the best group there that had 100% removal at 24 hours, we used those for breeder queens. So exactly what you're doing when you're doing this type of selections is a elimination process, whether it's for Varroa mites or for hygienic behavior. You eliminate the colonies that have, the queens from the colonies that have bad characteristics, and we queen them with those that have good characteristics. As well as our queen yards here, we use these are different genetic lines that we had, and they not only we could use them for grafting, but also for producing drones for mating. So now I'm going to get into a little bit more details on selecting for Varroa resistance. Now there are some questions you need to ask before beginning a selection program for resistance. First of all is, why don't you wish to stop chemical treatments in your colonies? Okay? And then after that, under what conditions would you stop all treatments? Once you have the answers to these questions, then you can decide whether you really wish to get involved in a selection program. Now, beekeepers give a lot of reasons why they don't select for resistance. This is just a few. It says it takes time, it's difficult to calculate the economic value, you have the short-term problem of economic survival. Cheap chemical treatments exist, and then you have the manana effect, as Ingemar Fries told me once, don't do today what somebody else can do tomorrow. The other thing is nobody else selects, so why should I? But there are a number of good reasons why beekeepers should select for disease. Can you hear me okay in the back or not? Yeah. Okay, if not, I can raise my voice. Chemical treatments cost gas, labor, and chemicals. Your diseases and your pests become resistant to these chemicals over time. In addition, you're going to have a chemical contamination of your honey and beeswax. So if you're trying to produce biological honey, you can't really do that. And then you're going to have a negative effect of chemicals on the colony fitness. For instance, Spivak and her group showed a long time ago that too many chemicals will reduce the viability of the sperm and the spermatheca of the queen. So how do you select for Varroa resistance? First, you need to, and I'm looking at this from the standpoint of a professional beekeeper. First, you need to select the bees that fit your economic needs. You need to use simple tests that give clear results with low labor input, and as I mentioned earlier, selection is simply a process of elimination. How do you keep your bees resistant? Well, first of all, you breed daughters from each resistant queen, and then you spread out the resistant daughters over all your bee yards. It's important to have different daughter groups at the same yard so that you can do comparison testing. And what's very important is you need to maintain mite pressure. I repeat, you need to maintain mite pressure. Now, I'm going to talk about 3 different bond tests that we developed. The first one, live and die, I think is clear. I don't have to go into details. We developed the second test, called the BAT test, survive or die now. It's a quite simple test. You take a frame of highly infested worker group with 40 mites per 100 cells. You hang that in the colonies you wish to test. And then in about 6 months, you'll know whether or not those colonies are going to be good for breeding from. And then we described the third test, the soft bond test, at Montpellier. Now you need to remember that blind tests are blind tests. In other words, you may not know why your colonies are surviving, but the most thing that's important is that they survive. The advantage of this is that you can select for unknown resistant mechanisms that can be expressed. If you do it, try to select too close, then you're going to miss a lot of these mechanisms. You have to realize that in bee breeding and bees, you have a lot of crossing over, and so you might not, you might be surprised at some of the results that you might get in your breeding program. So people ask me why I stopped all treatments in the colonies. Were quite simple. We had, when I treat in the fall of the year, at that time we didn't have inserts. We were shooting in the chemicals in the colonies, and every time I would shoot it in, and I had bad headaches. I talked to a few other beekeepers, and they said the same symptoms. It was like being hit in the forehead with an iron bar. So I decided that, good, a selfish decision for my own personal health, I decided, good, I was going to stop treatments and see what would happen. simply because I couldn't buy a new brain. Perhaps in the future that'll be different. And so at the same time, Ingemar Fries in Gotland in Sweden was running some tests, and our goals were simply to see if colonies could survive mite infestations without chemical treatments. And in Toulouse we had an open mite population under commercial beekeeping conditions with mite exposure from other beekeepers. In Gotland it was on the island, it was a closed mite population. Like I say, the important point for both of us was to see whether or not the colonies would survive. In Toulouse we used two different populations, and they were selected for queen and honey production, and then colony increase was made by using queens from the best colonies with the lowest mite infestations. And our goal was to maintain mite pressure so that selection for low mite phenotypes would occur. I was told I would lose all my colonies. I calculated if I had 10% survival, I could run a breeding program. I had 30% or 1/3 survival, so I had 3 times as many colonies as I needed to run a breeding program. Colonies were not that nice after getting through, but it was a place to start off with. I think I went and so to give you an idea of what to expect when you're doing this type of selection, first of all, you're going to have a build-up phase. We had stopped treating in 1998, so you have a build-up phase of your mites that are gradually building up. At the beginning, you're not going to see many colony losses, but then after a couple of years, you're going to see high losses, and then at one point, your extreme values of mites on the colonies are going to disappear. And then you're going to have let's see if I get this thing here, a shift to the left. In other words, here's 5 mites per 100 bees. But before we were going up much slower, so you can almost draw a diagonal through, and so you can see what type of progression you can expect in the breeding program. Same thing as when you do for the brood deer also, you see there's a shift from large dispersion, and also then a shift to the left to low mite populations. And this is in adult mites, daughter mites, and immature mites. Our conclusion was that we had a high mite resistance in each gene pool, and we had low mite populations. And this indicated to us that genetic selection is possible. I'd say that our colonies are probably not mite tolerant, because if the tolerant, the mite level should have remained the same or even increased. And also we saw very few symptoms of deformed wing virus. For those of you who are interested, you can get more details in the publication here. We published that cost a lot of ice cream money. And so every time somebody reads it, it's just like I've eaten a nice ice cream cone. So why have most beekeepers not adopted the bond test? Well, one thing is it keeps you very busy doing nothing. If I told you got to sit around for a couple of years doing nothing, you wouldn't feel too good. For that reason, we had developed the bat test, where, as I mentioned earlier, we put in highly infested brood combs into the colonies. But there's some problems with the bond test and the bat test. The bond test, you're going to have high losses on a regular basis until your resistance or tolerance appears. And the bat test is too short to select for long-term resistant mechanisms, because in selection you're not only wish to have things that function in the short term, but also in the long term. But the biggest problem, of course, is fear. I can lose everything. If I told you you stop all your treatments now, I imagine we'd have a few cases of, to put it politely, instant diarrhea. So we need to find a technique acceptable to beekeepers. Have to be simple, cheap, few risks, but above all be psychologically and economically comforting. What? 6 minutes. Okay, I'm going too slow. So we developed a soft bond, like I said, we talked about the soft bond test. Essentially, you select for production, and you do hygienic testing, and then you do your Varroa counting, and so you're doing a more expensive testing on a limited amount of hives. I'm going to have to speed up my talk here. So you need to spread out your breeding material between the maximum number of colonies, breeder queens, etc. And it's good to exchange your genetic material with other queen breeders, because whether you like it or not, you're going to squash your queen and you'll lose your material. The advantages of the soft pond test: you have natural mating, no special equipment is needed, increased economic performance, you have better hygienic behavior, and you limit your losses. And it's comforting. And to be efficient, I say you need to graft from the queens with the lowest amount of Varroa, monitor your Varroa level. When they're less than 5%, stop treating. The bond test, you're going to have high losses at the beginning and less work in the long term. And the soft bond test, you're going to have low losses, more work. Now, at the same time, when you're doing the selection, you can do other things. For instance, we selected for gentle queens, and simply we queened any colonies that had stung a lot. In Sweden, they use a different technique, but that works quite well also. Up to you to choose your techniques. So what is the cost of producing a breeder queen? Give an example, we produced 20 breeders from 430 colonies, selected for pollen production, hygienic behavior, no Varroa. After you do your testing, you download your data into the tables, Excel, and then you can go through and here, for instance, this is a hygienic behavior. We took the colonies that had high hygienic behavior, and then we took the best three in each group that had high pollen production to use as breeder queens. So it's a no-brainer type of selection. So it took us about 11 hours to produce a breeder queen from, in other words, 220 hours labor to test to pull 20 breeders from 430 hives. Then you have the ratio of time below that you need to do that. And so, to give you some practical advice, don't be in a rush. You need to let natural selection operate and calculate your economic cost. And remember, let me go back here. No, let me go here. I'm pressing the wrong buttons. You have to calculate your chemical damage to your queens. Just go for that. Go back to the work of Marlis Spivak. And also the mite economic impact between treatments. Because your mite population is going to be building up, you're going to have problems with deforming virus, and so your colony is going to be affected. I'll try to speed up a little bit faster. Try to press the right buttons. I like to say that future resistance selection will be easier and a lot more fun. It's going to be due to better testing methods, data banks, and analysis, so we'll have less excuses not to select. When we started off, a lot of people didn't wish to get into resistance selection because of the cost and that, but we used the latest high-tech techniques available at the time. They were expensive, but they worked. Water wash, filling the bees, pretty expensive honey strainer. And then the hygienic test, where we find the hygienic behavior in the colony and pull the root sample that we pulled out. We would count that for Varroa mites. And then the regular equipment here, all this is high-tech equipment. Perhaps today you can afford it, but then that was out of the reach of some beekeepers' budgets. And be sure to write down when you're testing, when you start counting and when you finish, that way you can quantify how much it costs you to select. I wish to make some selections for data banks. I say that if you can determine when to treat, you can also determine what to select. And you need to help beekeepers and queen breeders mine their data easier and ask them what they need. Here, for example, the Bee Informed group has done a lot of interesting work, real good work, but I tell them they're sitting on a gold mine here. If you look at that little figure there, that represents 309,000 plus untreated colonies. Those are potential hives that could be selected for Varroa resistance. And so there's gold to be mined here. You just have to realize the gold is there. Now, in a future, or now even you can use telephones to count your mites in the field. Also in Poland, they're doing using sensors to measure the chemical signals given off by high mite infestations. So in the future, you'll probably just have a walking cane, and you stick that in the entrance of your colony, and take a odor sample, and then you know whether or not you have mites. But I say you need to make it fun, so why not hook up your sensors on drones, and then tell your kids, well, you can't play with these because it's too difficult, and they'll fight over who can go through and put the sensors into your colony entrance to take samples. I don't know if you got the joke there, but... so I'm going to end the talk, and for me, if I got the time, the most important part of my talk right now are your questions. And so, I don't know, how much time do I have? 4 minutes. Sometimes when I give this, I'm too long or too short, so go ahead and feel free to ask questions. I may not know the answers to your questions, but I may know somebody who knows the answers. And then again, so you got 2 microphones here, and if you wish to wake up now, you can wake up and we'll ask questions. So, questions?
First of all,
can you speak in the microphone, please, because I'm deaf and blind.
can you hear me? Oh, there we go.
Yeah, that's better.
A number of years ago, I sent you an email, and you actually responded. I'd like to thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how do you've treated, you know how bees, when you treat for one, or you breed for one specific trait, you're losing other traits. So when you're selecting for mite resistance, how does that affect what we really want the bees for, which is honey production?
Okay, for instance, as I pointed out, the first thing I select for is honey production.
Okay.
And then I select for hygienic behavior, and then I select for mite resistance, because from a commercial standpoint, there's no sense to have a mite-resistant bee if it's not economic. And I'm trying to maintain as much genetic diversity as possible. Now, of course, there are other systems where the objective is to maintain genetic diversity, but that's another type of selection, which is also valuable. Is there another question?
Yeah, thank you. How many daughter colonies or lines do you think that you need in order to keep a breeding program going for multiple years? And then what do you think the mean apiary size should be before you start drawing selection from it?
Okay, repeat your first question again.
So the first one is, how many daughter lines do you recommend running so that you don't end up narrowing your genetics too fast?
Okay, to be honest, as many as possible. Of course, that doesn't answer your question there, but when you're finding your first colonies there, you should breed from anything that shows good potential. And so I can't really give you a fixed number because it varies depending upon the number of colonies that you have. But I had calculated that I could run a genetic program with just over 100 colonies. I could do a genetic program with that. But the main thing on each program is to maintain your genetic variability. Okay, your second question.
And then the second question was the mean apiary size, because drones contribution is a big deal in this selection.
Yeah.
And I find a lot of times when I talk to breeders, there's a big conversation about queen selection, queen selection, queen selection.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's like, how do I figure out my drone congregation areas? How do I manage my drones? So what should the apiary size look like in order to keep those lines fresh?
Okay, so question on apiary size. So we run apiaries about 24 colonies per apiary there. And the thing also is that with many VRs around, and these have been requeened with genetic material from the best Varroa resistant colonies. Those are going out and mating with the beekeepers in the neighborhood. I have one beekeeper, he told me, well, he treats his colonies, but he said he's getting about 6 years out of use out of his Apistan strips. He says every year he just goes through and scrapes them off, and he says any chemicals come out again. He was happy with that, but I think his queens were playing around with our drones. But, okay, I guess I'm out of time here, and so if you have any questions afterwards,